Hello and welcome to the Film Ireland podcast. I'm Gemma and I'm chatting with filmmaker Trish McAdam about her powerful film Songs of Blood and Destiny, based on Marina Carr's epic poem iGirl. So thank you so much for chatting with us. Your Incredibles film is screening in the Kerry International Film Festival. It's a very visually striking film. It's like powerful for content and theme and delivered just through some extraordinary performances and in a very like evocative way, but a very kind of like honest and simple way. Like it's just really it's a really interesting and very gripping for something that is in a way an experimental film, and like and that the narrative is structured in such a way that it leaps, but it's surprisingly, for that type of film, like like you mesmerizing. Like you can't look away, and you're brought on that journey, and it's so violent and brilliant. So like just talk to me a little bit about how it came to be.
Yeah, it is very funny because I think some of these things I think do come out of COVID, actually, in a weird kind of way, because people try and do things in with limitations, and sometimes you know, when you're doing things with limitations, you have to be very, very creative, you know. And I think on this project, what's very lucky is that the creative minds that came together, if you know what I mean. So it's a really good poem start with, you know. And so I think I read the poem, and it was Cliona Marr in the Clonmel Junction Festival who brought it to my attention, because she was doing something with Roger Doyle, who had done an opera album based on Marina Carr's poem. And so they asked me if it was supposed to go on as a little part of the opera, was supposed to go on as part of the festival on stage. But because of COVID, it couldn't. So they said to me, would I do something with them as something they could put online? So they were talking about a video, and I said, well, I don't really want to do a video because I didn't it hadn't even been rehearsed. You know, I thought it's actually a lot of work to make something theatrical work, you know, on film. So I said, I don't know. I said I thought about it, and strangely enough, what I came up with was this idea that you could just do the face, okay? And I was thinking about the face, and I was thinking, Morgan Crowley was going to do it. We were doing Oedipus, and he was going to do it. And I rang him up. He said, I've never even done selfies. I said, well, I'm going to have to do this on a mobile phone. I'm going to have to send you the mobile phone, but I'll send you a little gadget that you can set it up. And I want you to put white makeup on your face so that you have a mask on. And I want you to film it several times, and sometimes be singing what you were singing and sometimes not. And he said he was very kind of unsure, you know. And I said, I'll send you a frame so you can copy it. And the frame that I picked was Sinead O'Connor doing Nothing Compares to You, which is funny, you know, in a way, because uh, you know, it's such a brilliant video. And she's so brilliant. And somehow they really did pick a very interesting thing, that they just left it on the face, you know. And I thought, well, that's possible. And I mean, I know Sinead is a genius, but I still thought there's a very great power in the face. So Morgan set it all up. He did it all. He sent it back to me, and then I just started layering it from charcoal drawings I had and pictures I had. So it was a very small little piece. It was like, I think it was 7 minutes long, and you know, we went online, and you know, people really liked it. So Clea said to me, you should look at the poem. So I did. And then I put it in for an Arts Council Project Award. It's a very low budget.
Like 70, is it? I think it changes, but it's around 70, yeah.
So I had to really think, how am I going to do this? You know, and right now the beautiful thing is that the poem is so good. So I wrote a kind of a script. I got Marina to approve it. I had to make some small changes to her poem, a little bit in the order, and also I said to her it's too long. And so I needed to cut some. There were two Jocastas and three Antigones. So I said to her, I won't cut the lines. I'll never edit the lines on you, but I'll just cut a couple of chunks out. So we got the script, and then I went to Maureen Hughes. Now, Maureen Hughes is a brilliant casting director. And I had in my head that Eileen Walsh would be great as the narrator, because I've done some work with Eileen, and I just think Disco Pigs is another thing that's, that kind of two-hander, something that really, really worked. And so I've always really liked her. I think she's a very, she has that thing you're talking about of being able to halfway go between film acting and theatre acting. So it's bringing those two skills somehow. Anyway, Maureen and I talked about all the different parts, and Maureen is brilliant at having an eye out for who's around at the time. So Cathy Belton, amazing. Like Cathy Belton came on board from Brian, and then the two young actors who I think Maureen's particularly good at new talent, spotting new talent. So Lilly Hyland, when I saw her video, I thought, oh, absolutely. She's very cheeky. I don't know if you've seen her comedy, but she's very funny. She's funny. And I thought, she really had a great face. And I love the idea of the accent, For Joan of Arc, she's got a kind of I think she's Carlo or Tipperary or somewhere around there. And then Holly Sturton, who for Antigone. So, so you start off with a very good piece of writing, and then so then I was thinking, well, where will I shoot it? So I got this production manager, Grace Sexton, and I was saying, I was imagining some kind of maybe, barn or, some place, that we would get for very cheap. Anyway, somebody told her that the Après Match green screen studio in RTE was available. And it's a really small little studio, but all we were doing was close-ups. So we ended up with this, like on a very small budget, we ended up with this perfect location because it had a makeup area, and it had a shooting area, and it had a canteen, and everybody knew where it was, and it had car parking. So the whole shoot was so well, it was so simple, And so what I did is I shot for 6 days. So 2 days with Eileen, and then 1 day with all the rest of them. And it was very ordered in the sense that I wanted to combine some element of rehearsal and performance, in the one time. I didn't want them to come too prepared. I wanted to, kind of to be quite spontaneous. So they all come in reading from the script. I gave them all a single script of just their part. So they're all reading from the page in the morning. And by lunchtime, they're off page. And by then we have found the rhythm of Marina's poem. Marina's poem it's written in lines, like word, 2 words, 3 words. So, but you can't read it as sentences. So they came in doing sentences, and I was encouraging them. No. Marina says she writes, and it comes from the gods, and she hears something, and then she waits for the next word. So you have to do the same when you're performing. So they started to do this acting that they were thinking the next word, but actually they knew the next word, but they were acting this, thinking this word. And somehow the rhythm of it would come to them all very obviously. There's a very definite Marina Carr rhythm, And after 6 days, I was talking like Marina Carr because she gets so used to the rhythm. It sounds. I was saying to somebody the other day, it's a bit like Shakespeare. If you hear somebody doing Shakespeare well, it sounds perfectly straightforward. Well, Marina's a bit like that. If you read it as sentences, it's not that great. But if you read it the way she wrote it, it suddenly pops. So at lunchtime, just before lunch, I had the sound guy put together the best takes, and then I left the actor in the room on their own with the camera, listening to themselves. And I just asked them to perform that, whatever way they felt. Just listen to themselves and then try and do an inner performance. And so then after lunch, we went back and did, I got them to put on their face makeup. Then they had a mask on and they knew the lines. So we went through it all over again and I filmed that. So I'm filming everything. And then at the end of the day, I did the same thing with them. With their mask on, I said, okay, I want you to sit in the room on your own, listen to your final performance, and just give me, non-spoken performance. So I had 4 takes to edit with, and also I felt the actors really felt empowered by being able to listen to their own performance and then, in a sense, know what was sounding good and what wasn't. And the other thing I did is I put a mirror lens on the camera so they could see it. And I think this partly comes from Morgan doing so well when I gave him the camera and I wasn't even there. And I thought there was something about his performance where he took charge and it really worked very well. He took the responsibility, and actually it really, really worked very well. So I did that. I had 6 days shoot. And then, so the whole thing is shot in 6 days. Then I go into post-production. That took about 2 years.
So you say it because that's an amazing process because it's so short. There's the whole thing is dialogue, but it's delivered so powerfully. As a viewer, you assume the actors have had a long time with this work. I'm sure they read the epic poem, but it feels very polished and deep when you're going in. When you're directing the actors, so you said you actually let them maybe decide on takes, or would you nudge a specific type of performance from somebody? Would you have conversations about the character or what you're looking for ahead of the shoot?
No, I actually think it's sort of interesting because I think process is very interesting. Doing is interesting. So yes, we did it in very short paragraphs. So they never read the whole thing. So in the morning they would read a paragraph and I would say, maybe this, what, and we would talk about it. And then they would do it again. And so they didn't just do it 4 times, they did it 20 times. But we just did a paragraph at a time and we would get to a certain stage of it in these 4 phases where I feel it's right enough now. But it happened the same way with all of them because I was very clear with the method that I was using and I saw it worked. Then I also had this sense that it was going to have this rhythm of not being absolutely perfect, but you always get a line, from editing, you always get a line that you'll never get again. And it can happen by accident. And sometimes we use some of the earlier, probably use mostly the last half of the day, but the odd bit of the earlier where they're looking around or, and again, that comes from the experience of COVID of handing a camera over to Morgan, who'd never used a camera before. And he did certain things that made me realize, that he could go out of frame or he could go and that I could use it in the edit. So I was telling them, turn their heads, do this, you can, and they did start, as you see, doing things like moving in and because they could see themselves. So I think, yeah, the roots of it are in the poem, in the rhythm of the poem and getting that right. And then there's something about Marina's work that you think it means one thing and then it suddenly starts meaning something else. And so by saying the words one at a time, they were able to go through that as a performance where they would perform it one way and then it would turn. And I think it's pretty exciting for them. And then to hear it back and realize that it was working. yeah. I think they all thought it was a really nice. It was a really nice shoot because it was such a. Then we go off and have lunch in RT canteen and do Oedipus on a mountain. You know what I mean? Yeah, it was really good. It was just a very nice. They were all really brilliant. You know, and Maureen uses a big responsibility for that. So I think everybody was in a very confident mood. And I honestly think Marina's work is like a magnet to actors. They all love her work. So I was able to, I think they were really able to trust it, you know.
And you as well with your strong track record. And it's going to be a strong, artistic, like worthwhile film as well.
Yes, and I think their sense of being me letting them giving them a long leash to do what they wanted to do. They took that permission, and often they aren't given. Somebody has an idea in the head. The other thing I constantly was saying to them is, I cast you because I want you as Antigone. I don't have an Antigone in my head. And it's not Marina's Antigone, it's your Antigone I'm looking for. So be you and Antigone at the same time. You know what I mean? Or be Jocasta, whatever. So it's that kind of combination of I think sometimes people can try and make actors maybe act something they have in their head rather than what the actor is capable of. I think people are the best at being themselves. So yeah, so I mean, I was very, very lucky with it. And I was lucky with the crew. I had a very nice, simple single camera, but Fiona Graham, who knew what she was doing, so she was very competent about the lighting. I know she put up a nice lighting set. She had to make sure that she was watching the focus when they were, allowed to move in and out with the camera. Because even though it's a close-up, they're still doing all this. So it's very concentrated and hard to concentrate on very simple camera. But she had the right lens, she had the right distance, she had she had all that. And the same with the sound. So I've got the sound person, the camera person, and the makeup person and the production manager. The other thing is that when you shoot film, often you're very distracted by the crew, costumes. Everybody wanted to know where's this, what's happening tomorrow, and everything. This was very, very focused on the actors, so it just made it simpler for all of us. It was nice. It was a nice shoot.
And you were saying then the thing that it wasn't simple was the post, because there's so much animation. The sound mix is incredible. The composition, it's a very kind of powerful. It gives it so much energy. Just how do you find that then in the edit first and then with the effects?
Well, what we did was I went down to Uchtard where Connie Farrell lives and where she was editing, and we edited the performances. And so then we had our length, if you like, and that in a way, that's the poem pacing it. And so then we started to work on some ideas for what kind of overlays might go. I mean, I went into it very open. I did feel that I had material for it because I've been taking photographs for a very long time and drawing, and I have a huge kind of archive of my own work to pull from. And I've been traveling in Namibia, Argentina, Europe, America, New York, all these kind of places that I kind of, when I read the poem, I thought, oh, I do a lot of nature photography and a lot of cityscapes and a lot of textures. I've always photographing textures for no good reason, except now I know where to put them. So I had this bank, and I had done the Oedipus thing, but also I've been working in animation for a few years now, since about 2009. And so, I knew I was bringing all that. I knew I could make animation. Like when it came to it, I could make something that would slot in. So we started to work with the textures first, just textures on faces. And then we got to a certain point where we thought we need the music, because even though the cuts were there, we were having another layer of cut bought these overlays and to put on top. And so I'm a big fan of a musician called Niels Fran, and he played in the National Concert Hall. I went to see him there. He's an incredible composer of keyboard and electronics and DJing kind of stuff. And I was talking to this woman, Aisling Higgins, in Clonmel, and I was saying to her about music and how much I loved him. And she said, oh, there's a guy called Paddy Mulcahy down in Limerick who you should listen to. So I said, okay, send me stuff. And so Connie and I got some stems from Paddy, and we put them into the material, and it really, really just worked. We looked at each other and went, this is the music, And so it turned out that Paddy actually had played support to Niels Fran at some point. So there was real connection between this musician that I really love and his work, which was also very nice. So he was very generous. He gave us a whole load of stems, and we allowed us to layer them. And then, in a sense, what I'm doing with the overlays I think, is a bit like what this kind of musician does, that composes with sampling and with putting effects on things and with a rhythm of sorts. So that's really what I'm doing. Sometimes there's 4 layers, sometimes there's 10 layers. You just keep putting the layers on and affecting them in different ways and how they're overlaid and moving them around and there's a kind of, like playing music, there's an instinctive moment where you go, that works. Or that nearly works, I'll get back to it. So it's just a process of going through it and through it and through it. So we worked, I think, for a few weeks down in Uachtaráid, and then there was a series of going away and coming back, and me working on it and Connie working on it. And there's a kind of an interaction in this kind of editing that's probably, the classic editing she would have done of the performances and later of the, doing all the fine tuning with the music and all that is very classical. But when it came to the layering, there was a bit of toing and froing, So that's kind of more or less it.
Yeah, and it's fabulous. And you were saying with the animation, so you were dealing with Guerrilla Post for some of it, or would you be hands-on and do sections of yourself of that animation yourself? Because like
no, Guerrilla didn't do any animation.
Okay.
I did. Guerrilla were post in terms of the sound.
Okay.
The sound post. So there's actually a credit in there for Mark Sherwin, who's a After Effects animator. So I've worked with him a number of times. So things like the New York Eatery, that kind of shot that goes down like that. So I worked with him. He's in After Effects. So I would have drawn the flat drawing of the inside. He'd make the box. Then I'd give him the layers of the box. I gave him the map. And Mark and I have worked together now for, I suppose, about 10 years. So I don't think he does like anything like this with anybody else. We have this kind of thing where, I don't know, we make these things. It is a very collaborative process, because I give them things and then we're kind of inching towards it being right. It usually takes about 8 versions before we get to the point where it's graded or start. So he did the caves and that moving, that kind of animation. The girl walking, the robot girl. So she's made up of like I did. I was kind of thinking that this robot was sort of cool, and she would want to have retro legs. So I looked up prosthetics from the First World War and found these amazing wooden prosthetics that really had beautiful texture on them. So I drew them. I drew them and that's her legs. And then I found this contemporary robot that had these nice arms. So I drew them, gave them, and then I gave her a little skirt. And so she's actually a collage. And then you just, all her bits move. So then I animated her. So that's my animation. I'm trying to think of what else is. So it's kind of a little bit there's a lot of charcoal drawing in there that's just not necessarily animated, but it's drawn like you would draw animation. So it's a combination of photography, video, painting sometimes. There's some paintings in there as well. So,
Did anything sort of change in that process in terms of like you knew you were going to use those artwork, or was it something that was, trial and error from your initial like shorter form project? Did anything, because it kind of feels sort of organic and building on top of things all the time.
yeah, it's like most things in life. You write a script and then it doesn't work. Like, so I did write a script. I mean, and in the script it would go, what's happiness? And then there's images of this, New York, whatever. But actually, and then there's underwater, mermaids, and blah, blah, blah. But actually, I didn't have any mermaids at the time, and it didn't. Then you start doing the actually edit. It's good to have something to start with, but that image of on her face at the beginning is just an image I have from New York that I always really liked, that I used in a slideshow in the 80s. This cage, and I just kind of thought there's something I wanted to start at the beginning of this, of like a woman in a cage, that like caged, and then they haven't cut my tongue out yet. So there's this sort of sense of women's liberation at the moment, but at the same time, this sense that in parts of the world, women's repression seems to be even greater than it was, that the progression is not even, and that it's capable of collapse at any point into chaos. And if societies do collapse into chaos, we see the potential sudden erosion of all that right stuff. So I think Marina starting off with that the complexity of women's lives, but at the same time the fragility of our position.
Yeah. And historically as well, that's one of the things that it does so well. Like it goes up through like the ages, but makes it so personal and angry. That's what I really thought like that part. Like, like to the words where you're actually examining, we've all heard those stories, but you actually get a sense of the violence behind it and that personal effect. Like it's just so powerful. I had only heard sections of it. I had never heard it performed like that, and it's enthralling. With something and you were saying it's 2 years for the post. Did you have to keep trying things? Like, did you eventually just stop, or were you like, it will not get any better? Or do you go, okay, I have a screening, I'm working to deadline, like something
Yeah, I
like.
did have a screening. I had a big responsibility because Creagh had the Junction Film Festival, Arts Festival, after a year, and I was supposed to have it ready for it. And so we did have something ready for it, which was near enough to what you see now, but it wasn't completely finished. So we had a kind of a screening that was a work in progress screening, which was very useful actually. I mean, we cut 10 minutes out of it afterwards. I actually listened to some of it it was in a tent down in Carmel. It was a great screening actually. It was a really nice place. And she was good enough to let it, come in that stage. I mean, people still respond. We knew after that the audience would respond to it. We knew it was a little bit too long, but we also knew it was still too rough to actually say it was finished. So that was quite the leading up to trying to get ready for Clonmel was very hectic. I went down again to Oughterard. I stayed in this amazing place near the lake, and much of the lake, we would go out some days and just shoot the lake and use them as overlays. The sparkly lake or the little warm kind of, the lake was amazing surface. It was and a beautiful light down there. But also there was a woman, the place I was staying, this woman was a breeder of dogs and cats. So there was dogs and cats around a lot. And she had chickens. And I shot the chickens. Like I shot shots of the chickens because they were running around like wild. And so they were cocks and they were very funny, And so they're in the film in the Joan of Arc bit, when her mother is talking to her, you see the chickens. So they're actually, and then the chickens got killed. It was that kind of crazy editing situation where I'm in this place and I'm shooting stuff around me because it happens to be there, and I need some grass or I need some this. Some of the grass is um from I knew before I went in when we were shooting in RTE. There's in front of the canteen there's grass from the big long tall grass and beautiful wind and certain lights, and you see it, and so there's some of the Joan of Arc. There's a arbutus tree in the just beside the canteen in RTE. There's this, and when it rains, the bark goes really red, and it's like a body. It's like a sort of part of a body. So some of Joan of Arc's burning is using that tree. So it's like you're kind of, when you're working like that, you become obsessed with everything you see. I was down Bullock Harbour, and there were seals there one day, and I swear to God they were auditioning. They were being so funny, because normally you take the camera and they run away, But I took the camera and they're like, so they're in it, I think it just became a completely way of life for a while. As anyway, we have finished it in July 2022. And then, we were, I was working on it here and Connie was working on it. So we weren't doing it full time, but we were just keep going in and do some more.
Something like that sounds very consuming, though. Was it a relief when it was over, or did you miss it? Constantly tipping away at it?
Well, actually, I'm doing no, I'm nearly finished it. I'm doing the subtitles at the moment, and I've got somebody who's hard of hearing looking at them for me because I want them to work for hard of hearing as well. But I'm trying to do them in a non typical subtitling way. And the other thing, I'd be curious to see what you think, is we're wondering whether to leave subtitles up. I'm trying to do it though in a way that it matches. So it's kind of I think when you do these things, and the reason you do them with the Arts Council is there isn't a restriction on when to finish, and you can keep doing it because it's worth getting it right. I think it's worth getting it right. So I'm trying to get it so that the subtitles match the poem.
Yeah.
In that they're not in sentences. I don't, because if you put them in sentences, it gets too straight or something. So they're like fragmented little extra bits in there. I was surprised myself when I was doing them for the hard of hearing that I thought, actually, this is kind of interesting if I can get it right. But so it takes a little bit of work. So normally subtitle would take like a day or two to do, and it's taking a couple of weeks because I have to get a few people to look at it and make sure it's right. But somebody told me that a lot of people look at things with subtitling on.
Yeah, a lot of people do. And the words are so important. Like the words that are chosen, they're so powerful that it is a good thing to kind of spotlight the form of them, and like,
yes, it highlights that it's based on a poem and that it's a poem. So I think we're moving towards doing that, but I definitely think it'll work for, like, at the moment, Mick Hannigan saw it in Galway, and so his company in Cork is looking after the festival routes for it now out of the country. And so that's really brilliant because I think Mick is somebody who's been programming for a very long time and has been involved with dealing with festivals for a very long time. And I think he will know how to place it. Because even in Kerry, Declan was, saying it's marginal what it is. Trying to find a slot for it is difficult because what I would say to anybody is, though, when I watch it with people are often think audiences are more conservative than they are. If something is good, I think they'll go with it. They're not going into the cinema expecting everything to be the same.
it like I'm sort of reeling from having watched it. Like it's really, really beautiful and powerful. And I think like that focus on the face is so simplistic and the performance is like, oh, Eileen Walsh, like it was
Oh, Eileen
just
Walsh is great, isn't she?
like there was a few times where she was just doing that little bit of the description, like I feel like she just had a delivery and it gets you. Like you really
Yeah.
are sort of dragged into it, whether you like it or not. And I think the visceral nature of the cinema is very powerful. So I would say, yeah, it's probably a harder thing to sell.
Yeah, it's theatrical in a sense, but all I would say is that I don't think it takes a very like people are watching animation a lot now, and I think they will take to a world like that. And it, you know, and the fiction that people are reading, I mean, and they're doing games all the time. And so I think actually once you get them to a certain point, they stop seeing it as anything other than what it is.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of connection now between poetry and rap and music, and the kind of way music has words in it now. It's kind of keying into all of those things. So I don't think audiences. I suppose sometimes it's easier to get an audience to come to something they're kind of safer about or something. But I think once they're in there, I do think audiences go with it. Yeah, yeah.
I think it's always the difficulty in marketing films. Do you know? Like I think it is just consistent for every single filmmaker. But something like this that is so distinct, is it a visual poem? Is it animation? Is it theater? And the answer is it like non-narrative art? Is it, like is it very strong narrative at the same time? And the answer is just yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Is it fiction? Is it truth? Is it documentary? Is it performed, dramatized documentary? And the answer is just sort of yes, maybe in a way, like all of yes to all of the above.
Yeah. I think what's interesting is that festivals are beginning to have a role again.
Yeah.
They lost their way for a while, and I think they're now beginning to have a role. Mick was saying to me that discovery is the big word now. So it's like discovering something that isn't getting the attention or isn't likely to get the attention, because things are going straight to Netflix or they're going straight to streaming. So they don't really have the festival's role is not quite as unique as it, it's hard for them to get anything that hasn't been around already. So I'm curious to see where it will go. I think because it's Marina as well, I'm hoping it will have an educational aspect, because there's kind of a lot of like we're trying to get it into some, good festivals, but then to also get it into a lot of Irish places and around the world there are others, because I think it's got an Irish imagination in it, like sourced from somebody like Marina, who, I mean, I don't know, people have already discovered that about her. I think she's very unusual as a writer, she really likes it, which is great. She was very hands off. She's very generous that way. But I think she will come to some festivals with me, and I think I'm hoping it will have some connection into the cultural kind of Irish thing, because Marina's well known in that area. I hope that'll help it in the door, if you know what I mean.
It would be interesting as well. Something like this would be on the Leaving Cert, but there's a lot of it's very graphic and violent. Do you know? Like, I mean, that's the testament to it.
Yeah,
But I was like, I wonder how does that fit in? But I think like something like Senior Cycle.
it's very shocking. It's
Yeah.
very shocking what you're saying, but it's not. It's not. It's only shocking because you've thought it yourself, probably, or it's taking. She's not afraid to, but she's not. She's not. It's not some kind of polemic. It's actually somebody's feelings. about
Yes.
the mess the world's in and what we and not knowing what to do about it. And
Yes.
it's, I think the key to Marina's freshness and what the actors are bringing to it too is she does use the personal with scale of things and the emotions that one has with family and how that's a mess, and then go out into the world of Homo sapiens and go, and that's a mess. And you go beyond and you think it's all a mess. It's all a big mess. And I suppose it's good for people to know they're not alone in feeling things are a bit of a mess.
Yeah. And I suppose that's it. Like, if you think about it, we put all these narrative structures on like the failings of humanity, and we use it to tell, like, in classic, stories, and it's, the hero's journey. And I actually, what I thought was very interesting about this is like it is her using personal pain to acknowledge the damage, the collateral damage, like caused by man and humanity,
And
and how that
herself.
affects, yeah, and how that affect has affected us all, and giving face and voice to women in history that, before would have been this like noble abstract ideal, and to go, these were human women who
Yeah,
had to deal with pain in
yeah.
like a misogynistic society, and the fallout of that, and to give them those really relatable human.
Yeah, but Marina also brings in men, and I think this is there's a lot of women who love men,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of lovely men out there. But like you look at Oedipus's story,
Yeah.
and somebody was saying to me that they looked at it and thought, I've never thought from Oedipus's point of view before, like as a child, to go through that, and that way that she talks about the damage that's done to him, and that he's never able to be okay after that, after lying on that mountain. And you think how terrible for Jocasta, and you kind of think how terrible, but somehow he's inside the baby, being the baby on
Yeah.
the mountain, and he never forgets that.
The gentle Neanderthal man and the act of
Gentleman.
violence that was bestowed upon them. And I think like
Yeah.
it speaks to colonialism and that fallout
And
of.
couriers on the corner.
But it's so sort of universal,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
personal and universal, and big and small and domestic and political. Like, so that's why
yeah, yeah.
it's just a really beautiful like, and because it's told so personally, you watch it. But actually that's what's really hard, because it's very confronting. Like, there's a lot of acts of violence that when you go into it, you're like, it's actually like you can hear like a documentary talk about it, a third person face to camera describe something that happened in the
Yeah,
past, and you don't
yeah,
have that
yeah.
personal attachment or that first hand.
But I suppose that's the beauty of fiction, and like somebody like in the hands of Cathy Belton to go through all that she went through and then suicide. And I also love, because I've watched it a lot now. Every time I see it, I get something different out of it. But Antigone also, it's very hard on her mother, you know, about her incest and her hanging herself. And it's that naive adolescent point of view where you think
You know it all.
you know it. And but that's great as well that she could talk to Creagh the way she did, and that she's a very understandable character. But you see the fault of that character. So I think, and in some way that Marina has been that character, and you've been that character. And I said to her when I read it first, I said I just thought it was about me, and I thought I wrote this. And she said, no, no, that's about me, and I. So I said to her, well, I think one of the reasons I want to do it, and I think there's probably a lot of people out there who will think that's me. Not exactly, but it's amazing how extreme it is and yet how personal it is that you kind of actually, I know what you mean, Marina. It's like, yeah, you have to say the source of these things, or, you can't start with a bad script or you get nowhere. But then you have to do something interesting. Even a good script will not survive if it doesn't have these elements that come in, like Maureen and the cast, and so I kind of think, yeah, you get lucky sometimes, and these elements come together where nobody's fighting the film, and everybody goes with it, and somehow the work comes out through the people because nobody's fought it.
And had you known all that, like all that work, all that time, going out and getting all those textures and catching on,
Yeah.
had you known that, would you have been like, I'm saving for the bigger award? Would you, or would you go into it again and go, okay, I'll budget my time in a way, like,
Oh no, I would definitely. In fact, I was up in Anna last week, because I have a film called End of Romance, which everybody loves the script of, but because I'm a strange director, it's very hard to get the money for it. So I have to bring my budgets down all the time. And so I was up in Anna trying to figure out how to bring it down. But actually, you do get a creative freedom. I don't mind editing. I love editing. You know what I mean? I love the editing process. To me, it's a big part. For some directors, it's not a thing. For me, editing is huge. And I mean, I suppose all the elements are very. I love the whole thing. So I would just, as long as I'm doing it, I'm absolutely happy. The hard thing is getting the money to do it. You know,
and even Mark O'Halloran is the
yeah.
lead, isn't it? That
Yeah, it's going to be, yeah, Yates. Yeah, so that's, and he's a fantastic person. As you can imagine, for me to work with an actor like that, it's that's what these actors are like. It's a very great privilege to work with somebody who has a skill you don't have and can talk to you about it and then use it in a way. And I feel he's going to do an incredible Yates. But I'm being inspired by this one to actually pull it back a bit and try and do it on a lower budget so I have more creative freedom, because what I'm trying to say in it, because it's Maud Gonne, Israel Gonne, Yates in the war, and London, in the arty side of London. And it is something about society and personal relationships. And so it's, in a way, it's the same kind of material. And so I think it's interesting for me to see audiences go with this, and feel I can actually fracture something. And as long as the narrative is powerful and the performances are good.
that you can, but it's period that would be like expensive. Although a lot of people in that era shoot in Dublin because it does look like London and it's easier
Well,
to
what
get.
I'm trying to do is a modernist version
Okay.
rather than a period version, because actually people think of that as period, but it's the beginning of the 20th century was the period of electrification and fracturing of music and art. And if you look at the art of the time, it's very like punk and actually a bit like now.
And around the time of AI, that's exactly what's around the corner. Like we have that changing of technology. Right now we're on that cusp of
Yeah.
how is that going to change it? So that's
Yeah. And
very
also
interesting.
the way Yates was working, if you see Yates plays, which I still think are ahead of its time, they're using Japanese dancers and, like very, and also at the Hawk's Well is the play that he's doing in the End of Romance, and it's shot by this photographer called Alvin Langdon Coburn, who's an early experimental photographer. So he's photographed this. I actually can see the rehearsals, and he's also photographed Ezra Pound, Yates, and so there's an exhibition in the film of the work that he did at the time with these crystals. And so the way that experiment is going on in the arts at that time, some of the photography of that period, Man Ray and all of that. So it's really, you can do period. I want to do period in a way that's not like period you've ever seen before. It's going to be shockingly bright and colorful. and modern.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I look forward to that, and you'll have to come back and chat with us. I could chat to you for hours. I have to let you go now, but no, that's fabulous.
Okay.
Well, hopefully we'll see you at the Kerry International Film Festival. If not, we'll see one of your brilliant representatives from an amazing film. I couldn't kind of recommend it more. It's I don't know how to describe it. There's no real spoilers you can give, but it's just not maybe exactly what you would picture when you picture it. It's a real visual treat. So it definitely is something that would suit a cinema. And I think because of that theatrical link, watching it with an audience in it, like, it kind of only elevates that the depth of those emotions. Like, I think experiencing things together in that room is going to be very, very powerful. So yes, definitely get tickets for that one.
Okay, great. Well,
thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay,
Cheers. Bye.